Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here for another edition of Shaun Solo, and today I'm going to be talking about, reviewing, the new Camp Santos game, Firewatch. Came out on PC and PlayStation 4 this past Tuesday. And I did a live stream of it, the whole game, in one sitting. It's about 4 hours long. So you can check that out if you're interested to, either seeing the game itself or just watching somebody play it all the way through, because it is the kind of experience where if you watch somebody play it, it's very similar to actually playing it yourself. So in my opinion, we've people thrown around the term like walking simulator or non-adventure type adventure games like over the past few years, pretty much since Gone Home. Like, this is the first game I would say that is like spiritually, in like terms of intent and like mechanics and like what it was, the intention of broadly, like what the game is trying to do, is the true successor to Gone Home. There's been a lot of other similar games that have come out that are, the walking simulator type thing, but this is the first one that I feel gave me the same sensation or feeling. It's like their statement of purpose is the same. Like, let's create a space that the player can explore and let them kind of search through a mystery, like trying to figure out a mystery. So this is the first time, and they even actually have little Easter eggs for each other's games in each other's games. So if you play Firewatch, like you'll see the book, one of the father in Gone Home is an author or a failed author, and one of his books is about like the JFK assassination, about time travel and stuff. It's actually a little bit like the Stephen King novel 11/22/60 something. I can't remember. Oh shit. Well, there you go. I'm not a history buff. And that's actually in Firewatch. You'll find it like in a cache somewhere. So I'm probably gonna talk about the story. So there's gonna be spoilers for this. So if you haven't played the game and you want to play it, I'll let you know. I will tell you when I start talking about the story, because there's really not a whole lot to talk about, unless you talk about the story. It's kind of the meat of the thing. It's the point of the experience. So, like, most of my critique is going to be about how it told its story, and it's really hard to be broad. So I will give a warning when I get into that territory. So first off, I got it on PlayStation 4. It plays like garbage, actually. It hitches a lot. Actually, it locked up on me. So the stream's in two parts, because I think it was going into day 76 or 78 or something, and the whole game locked up on me. Luckily, I only had to replay a short section, so I didn't have to go back and do a longer section of the game. So it plays like garbage on PlayStation 4. I've heard that it's because it was created in Unity, and Unity and PlayStation 4 are not the best bedfellows, apparently. It's kind of difficult to get things to run well for some reason, which is too bad, because from what I understand, Unity is the most ubiquitously used creation tool for a lot of games. A lot of people use Unity because it's easy. It's been streamlined to the point that you kind of only need a minimal amount of experience to at least create something. I'm not going to say it's going to be quality, but you could create something. Like, I could probably go and study up on some stuff and figure out how to make a level or something like that, right? It's a lot of plug and play stuff now. But this game it's not like that at all. It's not plug and play at all. It's actually just wanted to bring that up, get it out of the way. The frame rate drops to like 6 or 7 frames per second, a few times. Anytime it goes into an autosave function, it pretty much makes the game hitch. So I would say every few minutes, you're gonna get a little bit of hitch. But it's not a game that's really dependent on those things working really well, because you're just walking around and talking to this woman Delilah, and you're reading notes and stuff like that. So there's no action to be had. You're never gonna have to run anywhere. You're never gonna have to rush to do anything. You're never gonna have to shoot anybody. Yeah. So the performance, while it is terrible, I've heard The exact opposite on PC. It runs fantastic on PC. The only bummer about, just one more thing about like the bummer about the performance is that it's a really beautiful, aesthetically looking game. Like the aesthetics are gorgeous. It's got like, in the same way that Gone Home, even though Gone Home's house was a little convoluted, a little contrived, if you will, like in terms of how they section stuff off by like having keys and stuff like that. By having this in like in the forest or in like in a kind of a large like nature preserve in Colorado, large park, if you will, almost. It is allowed to be more organically like block off sections of the game, you know, than say Gone Home did. You know, because Gone Home is contrivances about like, why is this door leading into the kitchen locked and stuff like that. You know, like why would that be like that? But in here, it's, you know, it'll be covered by brush, and you don't have an axe to chip it away, and you have no real reason in terms of character motivation to actually go there yet. It's a little bit more linear, I would say. Then I'm using Gone Home as the main juxtaposition here because it really, like I said, it really does feel like a spiritual successor to that game. Yeah. So but it's really organic, and the cool thing about, I would say, like the environment itself is that you learn it really quickly, and you learn like routes and where to go and where things are intuitively, like pretty fast. Which generally for me, like, you know, orientation is always a thing for me. It's always a pain in the ass for me for some reason in video games. I can never, like, I don't know if it's just part of my brain that's underdeveloped or whatever, but like, you know, I've never been able to play. Or maybe I just didn't play enough of them. But, like, I've never played enough of, like, Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5 to be able to, like, navigate most of that area without really kind of already, like, without having, like, a GPS thing on, right? I'm just not paying attention in that way, in that style. Other people have, honestly, they can. But for me, like, so that was really cool for me because it saved me a lot of time in terms of, like, having to look at my map constantly. I mean, I still did it because I'm just, like, almost like insecure about knowing where I'm going, so I oftentimes will use it more than I should or double check more than I need to. Actually, towards the end of the game, like I was like, well, I want to make sure. I want to make sure I'm going the right way. So I was like pulling it out more than I normally would, or I should have had to. Really, I didn't really need to do that, but I just was doing it. So that was a really cool thing. It was a nice surprise. It's a very thoughtfully designed area. Very, very thoughtfully designed. It all flows very well. I mean, it's got its gamey kind of contrivances in certain respects, but overall, like, you're not going to spend enough time in there, really, like, at least on your first playthrough, if you're just, you know, organically enjoying the story and just playing at a pace that you want to. Like, you're never going to get bored of the area itself because it seems a lot bigger than it is when you first start. It's actually pretty small, and you can get pretty much from one side of the map to the other in probably like 4 or 5 minutes max. Like, if you just run, you go pretty fast. But yeah, so I guess at this point, I'm going to have to get into some story stuff. Story spoilers. Before I do that, though, I will just say, in general, I thought the story was okay. I think I was not a huge fan of either of the characters, honestly. I mean, like, in terms of, like, I didn't identify with them. I didn't particularly like them. I just thought they were just kind of, like, whatever, shitty people. To a certain degree. I mean, that's really, like, judgmental and harsh. But, like, I was just like, I don't really like these two very much. By the time the credits rolled, I was like, nah. It is both, like, predictable and unpredictable in certain ways. Like, there are mechanical things, like, towards the end of the game that, like, I just knew, like, how it would end. I knew, like, the kind of tone it was going to end on, like, as soon as I started the game. It makes its purpose, like, really clear. But I'll save that stuff for spoiler time. But yeah, I would say, and like there is kind of the whole game is kind of predicated on, like, you know, there's a mystery going on and you're trying to figure it out, and it's kind of like a paranoia thing for a little while, and then it kind of has like a third act like event or discovery that doesn't like undermine that stuff so much as makes it feel unearned. It feels like it doesn't like build to its ending very well, in my opinion. It spends too much time on like red herrings and etc., before it like gets to its point, even though its point is pretty obvious, I guess. But like in a literal sense, like things that actually happen. So I would say about the story, like I would say I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed playing through it, but I don't like, for something about it, it's just kind of forgettable. And maybe it's because I've seen this magic trick already, right? Like I've seen like the Gone Home thing, and I've seen imitators of it. Like I said, though, I think this is the first one that does it correctly in a certain way, in the sense that like it's definitely, Gone Home is definitely a direct inspiration for this game and the kind of game they wanted to make. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting, and if you could get it on sale, or if you really like these kind of games, like I paid like $18 for it on PSN. It's like $20 on PC, and it'll be $20 normal price. But if you can get it like on sale, like maybe like over the summer or something like that, it would totally be worth your time. It's only like 4 hours, but it's a good 4 hours. Even if like ultimately like I was not completely satisfied by the end, I enjoyed my time with it for sure. It is what it is. It's either you like these kind of things or you don't. So like if you're going in expecting this thing to blow the doors off of something, or like redefine the genre, or do something completely new, like you're not gonna find that here. So that's that. So alright, now I'm gonna get into spoilers. I want to talk about the story a little bit. So right here. Turn it off. Turn it off if you don't want to know. So the story is about this guy named Henry and this woman named Delilah. Henry gets a job up on the mountain to watch for fires, and then Delilah is like his point person that kind of tells him what to do. It's kind of like his boss or his manager in some respect. Whereas she's also a lookout, and she's got a bigger view of the mountain. So she's up top, and he's like on the ground level basically to execute things. Like she's like, oh, there's fireworks. I see fireworks over there in the distance by the lake. You go check that out. People aren't supposed to be setting off fireworks because it causes a fire, and yada yada yada. So that's how you do that. But like, there's a little bit of backstory that actually they kept totally hidden, and it's about Henry himself. So basically, like in the beginning of the game, you do this kind of choose your own adventure story. A little bit light choose your own adventure stuff, which was interesting. And it's revealed that like you married this professor. You guys kind of had like a mediocre relationship. It was strained a little. It was kind of strained. Like there was inconsistencies in what the other person wanted. You find out that Henry is kind of a selfish asshole in certain respects, and like didn't support his wife in the way that maybe he should have. And this all also depends on like the choices you make. I mean, it doesn't make a larger impact in the story, but that's something else. That's another thing I'll bring up. But yeah, you find out that his wife gets dementia, and essentially her family at some point comes and takes care of her. And you take this job up in the mountain to clear your head and get some perspective and figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life, for lack of a better way to put it. And you try to, like the way I went with it, like I tried to take care of her. And then I ended up just going to bars and stuff. At night, after he put her to bed, he would go to bars. This just like there is like this, you can choose your responses and stuff like that in this game. I don't think they really matter, honestly. It's just kind of in the moment stuff. Like, it'll matter in the sense of like, maybe like the other character's reaction. Like Delilah, how she reacts to you, or how you decide to, like, what kind of relationship you're going to have with her. Like, I don't know if you could have, like, a completely antagonistic relationship with her, because it's going to limit your options at some point. Like, there was often times I was like, I would not say any of this. But then you got to kind of remember, like, well, Henry, as, like, who you're playing as, is a character himself. So these answers are probably true to Henry. It's kind of hard to tell because you don't know a ton about them. Like, the only thing you have is, like I said, that backstory, which kind of just sets him, and I think in any way you do it, it kind of sets him to be a little bit of a selfish guy. And he's doing this, he wants to get away. He wants to run away. He's into escapism at this point in his life. He doesn't want to deal with, like, any type of real responsibility. And this kind of cutting himself off from the world and communication with anybody else is just something he wanted to do to clear his head, and and whatever. The problem with Henry himself, though, Henry kind of starts and ends in the same place. It's not like a very good arc. He's not very much of a rich character. Like, you will be, like, it feels like, there are times where this game feels like it's building towards things and then just does not do anything with them. Subtextually or, like, character-wise. It's building towards relationships that don't come to fruition, and I understand, like, the entire idea of this is that, well, this is how real life would be. This is how life is. This is the kind of things people go through. A lot of times we open a lot of doors to dead ends, or things don't get explained, or things don't get followed up on, or, whether that's because of us, or a third party, or whatever. So, in that respect, it has that sense about it where it's like, we're going to just tell you a story about people, man. Tell you about people. This game also does the same thing about, like, that Gone Home does, in the sense that it gives you all these red herrings, all these things to create, like, tension, to create mystery. To give you more of a drive. It just makes it more engrossing. So, Gone Home, they would have red herrings, like, so there's spoilers for Gone Home here. I'm going to spoil a little bit of Gone Home, so if you haven't played that, also, I'm going to talk about that too. Just to juxtapose some stuff here. So the juxtaposition between, like, Gone Home and, like, in terms of how it uses mysteries, Gone Home uses red herrings like, ghosts. You think for a little while the house might be haunted. You find, like, fake satanic stuff at some places. You find, like, at some point you may think that these girls killed themselves towards the end of the game. It uses all these things to, like, subvert your expectations. Because it's almost the idea is almost incredulous that you would just be playing a story as mundane as it ends up being. So if, like, the idea that, like, if I'm not being if this isn't a subversion, would I care? Would I want to go all the way to the end to see what happens if I think that this is just, it is what it is, if it was presented plainly? I don't know. Probably I would, like, so that's a deeper question. Like, I'm not sure if I would. So in the way that Firewatch does it, it's a little bit more outlandish. It's a little bit more ridiculous because, like, the environment's bigger. Like, the thing about the house is haunted, and, like, there's just all this regret and this pain and all this stuff in the house. Like, so it leads you to think that, like, something else could be going on, or there's something, like, grander or deeper or whatever. It leads you down a lot of rabbit holes. This game does it kind of just, like I said, it's more outlandish. It's more like there could be a crazy government conspiracy, and people could be watching them and doing research about them. And, like, there's even a point where Henry thinks, like, gets so in his own head that he's like, he thinks that, like, they're doing it to him specifically to see how he would react because of the trauma with his wife, and he totally, like, internalizes it and shows it kind of, in the sense, it's a nice little character turn in the sense because he makes it like he is just that fucking selfish. Like, he would just think that this is, obviously, it's all about you. And then you find out, so that was kind of it reinforces stuff about his character. At least that's what I took from it. And that's kind of the big mystery that you're trying to figure out. It's like, who's watching you and what's happening, and is this supernatural, or is it a government conspiracy, and yada yada yada. And then you have, like, the other person in the story, Delilah, which you find out she's kind of a narcissist. She's a little bit of not the most trustworthy person. There's a lot of things that lead you to think that she's kind of not the most forthcoming, not the most truthful. Like, she has, like, a history, like an open history of kind of lying. Or not doing things, or not reporting things. And, like, there's a point towards the end of the game where she reveals that there's something that happens in the beginning, and she reveals that she did not, like, file a truthful police report. Shit like that. And then there's also, like, kind of, like, there's, the story, this story's, like, kind of peppered throughout it, this story about, like, what happened to the people from the summer before, and it was, like, a father and son that were up there, and they just abandoned post, basically. and just disappeared. And she just kind of went on the assumption that they just left. So what you find out, like the big conspiracy, what you find out, everything is that, which to me this was really dumb, and it comes at a time in the game where I don't feel like it really led to this in a way that felt organic. It felt a little cheap. You find out some of this information like just too late in the game, I suppose. Like, so you find out about like this. There's father and son, and like there's somewhat of a strained relationship there, and the kid didn't want to go cave diving or spelunking anymore, so he's like hiding the spelunking tools, and then immediately after that, you find the kid's body at the bottom of like part of a cave in a cave system. Yeah, so you find this kid's corpse, and then you realize that like, oh shit. For some reason, that leads people to think that Ned is still on the mountain. Like, apparently Ned has been living up on the mountain like a crazy person for a year, because Ned didn't want to be asked questions about his son, so it leads you to think like, well, maybe he murdered his son. But that's it. That's all that goes. That's as far as that story goes. You don't learn anymore. You do this like kind of third act contrivances where like Ned's leaving you like fucking audio recordings telling you to stay away and stuff, like kind of dumb. Like, it's almost dumber than the actual conspiracy theory. What makes it even dumber is that Delilah's not sure if she's going to report this boy's corpse. And Henry doesn't really have an opinion about it. Henry's, I mean, like, you can reassure her and be like, listen, it's not your fault. Like, you thought they abandoned their post and they just went home because they weren't enjoying it, or it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, or, you know, this guy brought this kid up here for the summer. But no, it's all, like, on Delilah, like, you know, are you going to report it? Like, I don't know if I'm going to tell the cops about it, because then they might ask me questions about why I didn't report it last summer. And it's just like, really? Like, so stuff like that is, it's like the practical, literal things I thought were, like, ends up being really contrived and kind of dumb. And I think it undercut, like, what you're supposed to really take away from it is, like, here's these two somewhat lost souls that make a connection, are able to help each other, and have, like, a meaningful relationship, even though it's only over the radio over the course of the summer. They have, like, that, but it's in a vacuum. It exists in a vacuum. They both exist outside of their normal, everyday existence. Like, they don't exist, and, like, this relationship will not be taken out beyond what's going on right now. That summer. That's it. It's going to be the end of it. Like, at the end of the game, I knew you were never going to see another person. Because that's just, they had, like, kind of this design thing they chose, and they just stuck to it. I think, like, honestly, like, sticking to that design, like, so closely, like, sticking to the formula, probably hurt the game in some way. Because they could have really surprised you. Like, imagine if, like, that guy just showed up. And you had, like, some mini confrontation or something. Or if the guy fucking jumped off a cliff and killed himself or something. Like, something that would have, subverted the expectation of, like, the design philosophy of the game. That you were this guy, and you're alone in the woods, and you gotta deal with that. And, like, and how being in the woods is creepy and can cause paranoia, and, you know, even if just, like, the seed is planted that something is going on, like, how terrifying that is when you're alone. You know, it's the same thing. If you've ever been walking deep in the woods by yourself, which I have, and you hear, like, a weird noise or something, it totally sets off all your alarm bells. You become, like, hyper-aware and vigilant. You start walking quieter and looking around. You know, like, even though that's completely ridiculous, but you kind of go into this weird survival mode. So the game tries to emulate that in certain ways. In certain ways, because there are things that happen, like I said, and it all kind of happens in the last third of the game. The last hour and a half, I was not, like, super into. In terms of, like, well, I didn't know at the time that it was going to be, like, in hindsight, once I finished the game, I was like, well, the last hour and a half of that, it really just kind of, like, goes off the rails, even though it doesn't go off the rails. Like, you find out, like, well, it's a little bit more mundane. There's no government conspiracy. Nobody's watching these people, really. It's just this crazy guy who's trying to make sure they don't find his son's body. Because that's the normal reaction of somebody when that happens. Which leads you to think that maybe he murdered his son. But like I said, they don't even like it's all in Delilah's. The ball's in Delilah's court. She's like, I don't even know if I'm going to tell anybody. Why wouldn't Henry tell somebody? Like, why wouldn't that be expressed? You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of stuff that you're, and it's not that you need like any closure, but you need like if your game is predicated on like this realistic relationship that has like that was driven on like emotion and whatnot, and then to have like kind of contrived false just things that feel wrong because you're trying to tie up your story at the end. So you kind of develop these things that just kind of a little too left field. I wish one of these games would just take the ball and run with it. Like, it's like the same way I felt when I watched the first season 1 of True Detective. The whole show, I was just waiting for it to go off the rails and like there to be like a Cthulhu, like H.P. Lovecraft type like demon. Like, just something crazy. Just fucking be weird. And just leave it there. Just leave it. I want that kind of mystery. Imagine how awesome it would have been if Firewatch had like a third act, just what the fuck. Just fucking crazy shit. I would have loved that. But no, it didn't. I was hoping, but no. Why would they do that? Why would they give me what I want? But yeah, so that's another, it's just a thing, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I can openly say that, like, I think if you enjoy, like, these kind of games, you'll probably enjoy it. Like, it's not terrible. The journey is better than the destination for sure. Or most of the journey. Because you don't know that it's, like, not going to fulfill, or it's not going to be satisfying until the credits start rolling. It's like, I even took a day, like, I would have done this yesterday, but I took a day and like just kind of I thought about it. I even talked to my wife a little bit about it. We were just kind of chit-chatting about the idea of like Gone Home really earns that third act twist, if you will, the twist, because all the pieces fall into place and you can look back and be like, oh, that makes total sense. Like everything that I've read or come across in this game now makes complete sense. When I got to the end of Firewatch and I would look back on my experiences, it doesn't all add up as well. It doesn't all just make logical sense where, like, and the logic would dictate, like, satisfaction. It just doesn't have that. And I'm not and I understand some people are going to probably be of the opinion that's the point, maybe. But to me, like, the conclusion wasn't I was really disappointed in. It was, like, just some of the execution right before the conclusion. That stuff, like, I just felt like, well, like, you just swapped one contrived thing for another. Just because, like, the idea that the story ends up being about this man and his son, and his dead son, up on the mountain. Like, that's, like, kind of the mystery aspect of it. Just because it was that doesn't make it less, like, silly, I suppose. Didn't make it less contrived. So there. But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like I said, it's not terrible, and I think while you're playing it, you mostly be fine with it. But I can't recommend that anybody run out. It's not the must-play game, like that. Maybe it's being made out to be. I mean, it's just like another one of these examples. These games come out, and there's just these journalists. These journalists, they're not fucking. They're hobbyists, whatever, enthusiast press, whatever the fuck you want to call them. Like, they're just all over this thing. It's like, I understand it's different. Like, and that's great. That's cool. That's wonderful. I'm happy that we have games like it. Like, just for the sake of variety. But let's not, like, but you gotta be able to have an honest discussion about it. Like, there's just so much disingenuous talk about this game. And a lot of it just goes down to, like, oh, the woods were beautiful, and I was so enraptured in the world, and I felt like I was there. But then, like, they don't acknowledge the fact that, well, you're a character. You're not even yourself. The character actually has a voice and an arc, and he speaks. You're not just some silent person, like, walking around, like, discovering a story. You are part of the story. That's a character. It's like playing Batman. Like, I don't know what it says about people that, I guess, played the game or were writing about the game. It probably says something about them. Just like my opinion probably says something about me. With a game like this. Because it's this goes beyond, like, subjectivity. You know, this is the truest sense of subjectivity you can have are with games like this, or with experiences like this. When it comes to games, because there's not a lot to talk about mechanically. Like it runs like shit, and it's mechanically simple. You know, but it also there's also it's really thoughtfully that area that you're in, incredibly thoughtfully designed. It's a really beautiful looking game. There's a lot of stuff you can just do. You can just hang out in this game if you wanted to. There's not that much to look at, to get kind of lost in my opinion. So I don't know. I'll probably end up playing it again because I didn't spoil it for my wife or whatever, but I think she wants to check it out, and so we'll probably play it together. But I'm not mad that I got it or anything like that. I don't feel like I got ripped off. It is for the most part, it's exactly what I would have expected out of a game like this. I was not. What I wasn't expecting is it to be so slavish to the formula of Gone Home, or to that they made this design choice and they just stuck with it and didn't attempt to deviate from it in any way that would be interesting. If they could have done that, just fucked with the design a little bit, and allowed for other things to exist in that space towards the last act of the game, because it would have been shocking. It would have been a real surprise. But they kind of just don't do that. So it was unfortunate. But overall, I mean, it's fine. I don't usually give games a ranking or a score or whatever, but I could say out of 10, this is a 6.5 or a 7. 7, and for me that's fine. That's totally playable. That's a doable thing. So, yeah. I've been going on for a while. So I guess I'll just cut it off here. But, yeah, those are my thoughts about Firewatch. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you don't mind, you could like the video, subscribe, maybe share this video if you're so inclined. I'd appreciate it. Alright, everybody. I'm Shaun, and I will talk to you next time I got something to talk about.